Let's go, people, let's go. It's Prognosis negative time.
Hi, this is Eric.
This is Sean.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, those in between and an affiliate. This is Isaac.
This is episode 49 of Prognosis Negative. Completely out of the blue. No one was expecting this until about 4 or 5 days ago. We'll get to that why in a moment. But we are doing, from 1952 specifically, The Turning Point.
Okay, go ahead. Hey, lady.
Now Paramount tells the sensational story of the unknown heroes who start in where the crime investigations leave off. Following through in the desperate fight to the finish against big-time gangland, its ruthless kingpin, and its mob of hoods who got away with everything until they killed a cop.
Police officer, drop that gun.
The Turning Point, a dynamite drama starring William Holden as McKibben, the tough reporter who knew all the angles.
If I were the professor, I'd question me, you, the DA, everybody in the whole kit and caboodle. I'd screen everybody.
You know they've been screened.
I'd screen them again. I'd get to know them intimately back to the time they were born. I'd question my own mother.
Edmund O'Brien as the prosecutor who followed a trail of corruption that was blazed in scarlet.
Where did you get this money?
From fellas. Where else? It's a silly question.
Alexis Smith as the beautiful society girl who started out by looking for excitement and found more than she bargained for.
There's a gun on me. Get away and keep in the crowd.
All right, so Isaac can explain the story of why we are talking about this movie today.
Yeah, I was going to ask that myself.
Of course. So, not to be doing any sausage talk here, just because, or peek behind the curtains, as it were. But I was thankfully invited. Once again, thank you, both gentlemen, for inviting me onto here and onto your other podcast, your Best Picture podcast. We had recently they had wrapped up the movies of the 1977 Best Picture category and nominations. And there was a movie in there. It was called The Turning Point. And, while I was watching it, while I was doing the research on it there, watching the picture, on the sidebar there, it also said The Turning Point, 1952, and I'm like, okay, what's that about? Is this a remake? Like, is this like the one we're watching, the 77 version? Is this a remake of that film? All right, interesting. I definitely want to go back and see what ballet was like in pictures of the 50s there.
Yeah, spoiler, listener note, this may actually release before the Best Picture podcast episode in question, so that is a possibility.
Oh yeah, there you go.
It probably will. Yeah.
Apologies, yeah.
By the way, the Red Shoes is the 50s or 60s equivalent.
Ah, okay. Thank you for notifying on that. So I just, I was intrigued. I was like, okay, well, let's. I don't know if, and I actually didn't get a chance to question now. I mean, maybe I can mull it over during this, discussion, but I didn't get to ask, okay, why was it called, not this film, but why was the 77 film, why was that called The Turning Point? And would people who watch this film in the day, would they get confused of like, this is nothing like the 52nd or 52 version? Like, what's going on here? This has nothing to do with a film noir, like a really interesting, or not interesting, but a film noir. There's no like, what's happening here. But anyway, I asked Eric if he'd like to do a podcast on this, and then I also said Sean's also like, why not? This would be up his alley, I'd think. And here we are today to discuss this film.
Yes. And fine reasoning. That's all I need to hear. If someone says, do you want to record on movie X? Literally could be anything, as long as it's attainable in some way. Yeah, I'm in. And Sean's just a pod whore, as I call it.
And this film is attainable if you want to watch it. It is available on YouTube. And I'd like to recommend, I didn't write it down, the guy's channel, because there's a couple of them available on YouTube. One looks and sounds terrible. And the other one was posted by a guy who sort of does like a horror host thing, like at the beginning. But he's dressed up like a detective, like, we're going to watch this movie now. And then he bookends the movie with that. I can't remember the name of the channel.
I'm sure Sean will have that by the end of the recording, or I'll look for it and it'll be in the show notes.
Yeah, either like Babel Classics or Broken Trout. One of the two.
Yes. But actually, besides YouTube,
Broken Trout.
Because now it can be found, for digital rental or purchase at the normal places. But that was relatively recent. Before recently, you could only find ugly copies of this movie.
Ugly copies.
So it's only been in recent times that this pristine version that you'd be used to has been widely available.
Well, that's great. But, okay, now that we've covered that, let's talk about the merits of the film.
Well, I'll let Sean start because in a weird way, I feel like this is more up his alley. And I'm sure he may tell us why I say that.
I think that you say that because I like mysteries.
It's part of it, but not necessarily that reason.
But specifically, I like whodunits. I like a puzzle. My issue with the movie was that, I realized that it's black and white. And Eric, in our podcast, the Best Picture podcast, we've talked about a lot of black and white movies. What did we do? Like 10 movies in a row from 1939?
Yeah, because 1939, of course, Wizard of Oz is mostly color, but yeah. And Gone with the Wind.
But, after you watch like a certain number of black and white movies, you stop giving a shit about whether or not it's black and white.
He's speaking for himself right now, but...
Really?
Oh, you mean it that way. Oh, I thought you meant you stop giving a shit like they're all the same. You mean you don't care that they're black and white.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, in that case, I am on board with you. Yes, 100%.
But I'm really, really sorry to say that the truth is that I had a really hard time paying attention to this. And I'm not one of those people that is like, I don't like black and white movies. Trust me, I'm not. Just trust me. Come to my house and look at my DVD collection. The ending was maybe a little shocking, but it was almost like this was directed by somebody that was used to just filming stage plays. All the shots were really static and all that. I know that we can't expect like Hitchcock or Spielberg or anything like that. But yeah.
Okay. I got things to say about just what Sean said. I'll go ahead and go next. But I think what you're talking about in terms of the shooting style, it's sort of like the traditional style that, any old random movie from this era would kind of emulate. Very commonplace. They're not doing anything experimental or anything. It does get visually more interesting at the end, but aside from that, it looks very standard, like shot for television of the day, like Twilight Zone in black and white or something. And I thought you were going to say the director, and I didn't even look who the director was. I'll look into his filmography a little bit later in this conversation, but I thought you were going to say it looks like it was done by a journeyman type director. Like, you just bring in any old guy and he shoots like standard for the day.
I mean, you know what? That's possibly, yeah. But you know what? Alfred Hitchcock was that at one point.
Yeah, he was, but just started much earlier than the 1950s.
But it's not like I walked out of the room saying, "Oh, the direction of this film just sucked. I can't stand it. It should have been directed by who's that guy? I don't like Eric, the one that did Thin Red Line and
Terrence
Malick.
Terrence Malick.
Yeah, it's not like it's one of his movies.
Oh my God, hold on. So I just looked at the director for the first time of this movie, William Dietary. He has at least two things that jump out at me. In 1939, he directed The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and he actually directed a Best Picture winner in 1937, The Life of Emile Zola.
Emile Zola. Okay.
Oh, so he can't be that bad.
That was a winner. That was a huge winner. We love that when that won.
We do.
Still have it on my mantle.
Passed in 72. So we have not done 37 yet on the Best Picture podcast. So one day we will return to William Dietary.
Look for that in the future in that other podcast.
So the reason I asked if maybe it was more Sean's up alley, it wasn't necessarily the mystery aspect, because I don't think of this as a traditional mystery, but I was just thinking because a lot of it, the movie comes from the DA's point of view, and they don't call him DA. I forget what they actually call him in the movie, but he's essentially a DA, correct?
That was unclear to me. I think he was.
They call him a special prosecutor. Would that be the same thing as a DA?
I don't know. It depends on what state or what jurisdiction.
Yeah, exactly. And they're in an unnamed Midwest town / city, small city, supposedly. So, and this movie is called noir, right? Genre-wise. And whenever I hear noir, I've seen noir movies before, but I haven't seen a ton of them. And whenever I think noir, even though I know there's different types, my mind immediately goes to thinking of something like starring Humphrey Bogart. I'm picturing like a PI or police detective going through the streets trying to solve a murder. This is not that stereotypical type of noir. And if you've ever looked into noir as a genre, I looked into it more when we did some movies on the Best Picture podcast. And it was like a looser term than we think of it nowadays. And it wasn't even called noir until like 10 years after that genre went out of style. But so they wouldn't have called it noir at the time themselves. They usually just call them like melodramas. They just put it under that huge umbrella of melodramas. But I've seen some noirs, and when I read the description, which I usually don't do, but it said special prosecutor. I was like, what? I don't remember any noirs with a special prosecutor. So I didn't know what this was going to be like. So this was kind of the first noir I've seen that looks at the situation from this point of view. Eventually, I did think of one other that I saw that was somewhat like this, and it's a popular movie from 1958 called A Touch of Evil by Orson Welles. That's the only other movie where there's someone who's like a DA who's sort of getting involved in solving some type of crime or organized crime. But that movie is Orson Welles, and it takes place at the U.S.-Mexican border, and it is like what Sean was talking about earlier. It's a black and white movie, but it's done by like a director that people know. So there's like a lot of style. Like it feels like a big deal movie, where this just feels like, like a regular release, like relatively low budget. So I'd never seen one that was like this, because A Touch of Evil is sort of like elevated cinema or whatever you want to call it. Also good. But I just thought it was interesting because I've seen stories that are like this in film, but usually the ones I've seen before are from like the 1970s or much more recent than that. I'd never seen a basic one like this from 1952, and that was really interesting to me.
There's a lot of them, and there's a lot of them that are much better than this one. No offense to you, Isaac.
I'm taken.
Right. Well, like I said, A Touch of Evil is much more dramatic and interesting in almost every way. But that's fine. And that movie's great. But just to see like a regular one, one that's not trying to be the best movie of all time, I hadn't seen one like this before. But yeah, that's my opening volley.
Now, what's really fun about this genre or subgenre, what I don't know what you want to call it, but it's sort of evolved into a bunch of wackiness in the 60s. And I really think that the TV show Batman is part of it. But
Yeah.
there is a movie called Kiss Me Deadly where I can't remember. It's a really kind of fucked up movie where this guy's trying to get a suitcase that has this glowing thing in it, but you don't know what it is. Sound familiar? Yeah.
Oh, hey, so that's where it came from.
Yeah, check that out. Kiss Me Deadly.
I got more to say about what this reminded me of, especially more about Batman. But go ahead, Isaac. What was your
Of course.
first take on this?
Thank you. Yeah, I once again, I didn't know anything. I didn't know nothing on going into this film of what it was going to be about. I just said I'm only watching it for the title because we had watched, previously a runner-up for a nomination runner-up, for the 77 Best Picture nominee or awards. So I was like, all right, let's see if this is predecessor to that, and it is not. And instead we have I guess you could say a crime adjacent story, maybe not adjacent, but it's I wouldn't call this a mystery. Really this is a bunch of pitting two different classes of America, or I don't know if you want to classes, but it's I saw this film as a chess match, a really interesting chess match as to how and where all the key players were and who was on which side, those who were a part of the free market and those who were trying to limit the free market. I don't know if I'm reading a little too much into that in terms of politics there of who is this?
No, I mean that's correct. If you distill it down, for sure, that's accurate.
Yeah, of course. Where if this is a comment on, I'm not, trust me, I'm not trying to look at this through a communist lens or anything like that. Of just, or if it was just okay, we've never seen the prosecution, or we haven't seen the law actually go at these criminals, and the crime movies were a big thing. These larger than life characters. It's what obviously led to the rise of the noir pictures or whatever, or Batman or whoever, goons wearing capes or whatnot than dicks with guns. So I appreciate that there was a lot less dicks with guns in this, even though there are dicks with guns, both sides. I mean, and so I did like the option that we didn't just see okay, obviously the main guy himself, the big hand, the big cheese. He's also oh yeah, he's running this business, and I just love that they use the word syndicate. It's just everything's out in the open, and he's trying to deny stuff, but he still is just this. I don't know. I did like the actor who did play, what's his name? Pardon me. I forgot. Great last name, by the way, of Eichenberger. There we go. Yeah. Eichenberger. He's, I don't know. I liked him as a antagonist in this. I just felt as a business suit.
That's Ed Begley, presumably father of Ed Begley Jr.
Okay. Who Columbo? Actually, I was going to ask you, Sean, is there any Columbo connections in this?
Yes.
I would like to ask.
Well, Ed Begley Jr. was a Columbo murderer.
Oh, there you go.
That's all I got.
I would say that this film also kind of reminded me of a TV special, I think either a TV, because this is clearly mid tier. This is not anything new. I just like it for how it's staged and just how it looks. That's not strong points for what I mean. I don't know. I just like how it is kind of evoking back to theater. I know I've had conversation about this recently of looks of film versus, because it looks very bog standard and generic, but I don't know why. Maybe something going back to the basics in regards to what is coming out in the theater this year or this month or this week. Who knows? It's just something to see a play on TV or on the picture. Nothing wrong with that. And they obviously needed these at the time as well. It's this isn't going to be anything grandiose or anything like that. We're still going to have standards and make it the best that we can, make the best product, regardless of if it is just a very like generic story over that. And so yeah, but I found this to be like a longer version of almost like a Perry Mason episode. With a lot more action in it, obviously, as well. There's, and even then, it was like that. Obviously, the action's a lot more reserved than you would see in like a Western picture around this time. So, yeah, Eric, go right ahead to any other questions or tangents you'd like to go towards.
So Sean had mentioned how he was pretty tuned out and he was having trouble following along. I had the same experience when I first started playing the movie, and I was playing Animal Crossing at first. And I kept having to rewind the first 5 to 10 minutes over and over because normally I can watch something while playing Animal Crossing. This movie, I cannot. So
I don't like that you. Okay.
I restarted it multiple times. And even now when I was dedicated to watching it and not distracting myself, I still had trouble for about the first 15, 20 minutes. And the reason is for the first 15, 20 minutes, a lot of the lead male characters, they just look really similar for some reason. Like, usually when I watch an older movie, black and white or whatever, usually actors, they're character actors. They have distinctive facial features or voices, but there was at least 3 male characters that I had the hardest time with who was who.
I agree.
It was the guy who's the special prosecutor, who is, of course, oh my God, I moved my thing. William Holden. So he's the special prosecutor. There's the guy who's the reporter for the paper, and he is...
No, William Holden is the reporter.
Oh, I'm sorry. William Holden is the reporter.
The guy that played Santa.
Edmund O'Brien or Brain.
There you go.
Edmund O'Brien is the special prosecutor. Excuse me. And then there's a third character, and his name is Bigsley. Who was Bigsley? Because he was another guy who looks similar, and I kept having trouble does he work in the special prosecutor's office, or does he work for the crime syndicate as one of the second, third stooges? But there was a character with the last name Bigsley, and those 3 people for the first 20 minutes, I couldn't keep straight who was who. And especially because Bigsley, whoever he worked for, he was one of those people kind of playing both sides. Yeah. And I was just like, what? And then the reporter, I was able to remember him between him and the prosecutor because he was the slightly younger, more dapper looking guy out of these gentlemen. And so that helped me a bit. But even then, even though I knew there's the younger and the older looking one, I would still get them mixed up. And then with the reporter for the first 20 minutes, even if I knew it was the reporter, I had trouble telling, like, was he trying to help the special prosecution, or was he just trying to be super neutral about everything and just do his job without leaning towards the crime syndicate or the prosecutor? And so, yeah, that was extremely difficult for the first 20 minutes at least. But I got past it, and then it wasn't so bad. But I had to rewatch the first 5 to 10 minutes multiple times, and it was tough. But once I sorted it out, it was fine. Anyway, so Sean had mentioned Batman, and I'm glad you did, because for the first 20 minutes, it very much reminded me of The Dark Knight specifically. That's the one, of course, with the Joker, but Harvey Dent. And, he's the new district attorney in Gotham, and he's going to like shut down all the organized crime. And that's a good example of a modern movie that has this type of premise. But like I said, I've seen modern versions of this, but not so much 1952. So it was interesting. So I kept thinking The Dark Knight. And then as the movie played out more and we saw more of what goes on and people started getting offed, etc., and I started enjoying the movie more. Like after so the father of the special prosecutor, he's been a cop for a really long time. in this town. And eventually he gets set up. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this later, about how he's set up and taken out. And so the movie got a lot more interesting when that happened for me. And continues on with some more interesting things we'll talk about. And I thought, you know what is a really good modern version of these types of noir stories? The damn Fargo series. And it hasn't happened yet because I've been trying to get Sean to watch Fargo for 7 years now or something.
I watched the first season.
The series. Okay.
That you sent me. I don't remember the.
Yeah, you don't need to talk about the series right now, but that series is what this is, except not so much from like the attorney's office, not that stuff, but just criminals doing criminal things and police trying to figure it out and catch the person. The Coen brothers love that genre. I guess a lot of their movies would be considered neo-noir because neo-noir was in the 70s. And it's this kind of stuff, but the way the Coens do it, and the Coens didn't even do the series. It's just inspired by their style of the movie Fargo. It is such a good version of this. So I don't know. I was like, oh man, people got to see the Fargo series if they haven't seen it. And you're right. You know, I was thinking how Batman obviously came out in 39 or so, and was obviously a big and popular thing. And I could see in like Dick Tracy. And that's another thing. There's obviously a lot of black and white mobster movies. I've only seen like one maybe, but I know there's a ton of them. And they have a certain kind of style. And this gets into the same type of material. It's just not like a stereotypical mobster movie, at least from the few I've seen. So yeah, it just had like a unique place. And I can see how that could be the opposite of a selling point for people because it's kind of like in the middle of genres and doesn't lean too far one way or the other. But yeah, and there's another big reference, but I'm going to pause with this and I'll share the next big reference later in this conversation.
I was wrong. Batman debuted March 30th, 1939. I said 38. That's Superman.
Yeah, because I remember the movie came out in 89 and I just remember a lot of the promotional materials. Like it was one of the first movies I went to where they handed you like a full color pamphlet brochure. Like I don't remember that really being a thing until I saw Batman 89. And so a lot of the imagery said like 39, 89, 50th anniversary. That's why I guess 39. But anyway, Sean, what else did you like or not like about this movie?
I liked the ending. I thought that was it wasn't great, like happy ending. I mean, it wasn't E.T.
Right.
But I like that it didn't have to be happy ending. It was a tragic ending, sort of. It was a Shakespearean ending. I don't know. That's all I have to say about that.
I thought you were going to say, I mean, I like that aspect too that you just brought up. But earlier you kind of hinted that, you know, the ending got a lot more interesting. I thought perhaps the whole boxing arena situation, because to me that has to be like the climax of the movie.
It is the climax of the movie, and I'm glad you brought it up because I didn't like it. I thought they were trying really, really hard to be really dramatic, like Alfred Hitchcock or something.
Yeah, it was kind of like how a Hitchcock movie would end.
Yeah, but we're talking about like 1930s Hitchcock. We're not talking about like Hitchcock in America type thing.
Oh, I'm thinking more 50s and 60s because I haven't seen a lot of his pre-World War II stuff or pre-1950s stuff.
But yeah, I mean, mostly I didn't have an objection to this. It was okay.
I thought that
it was
this would
fine.
be I thought it might be a slightly hidden gem for you. Slightly.
No, it wasn't a hidden gem for me. It was homework for me. It felt like homework. And also I didn't feel well. So maybe it wasn't a good time and place to watch it when I did it for this.
Well, I'm glad you put in the work, even though you weren't feeling well. Isaac, what do you think about the ending and or the climactic scene?
Somehow, I don't want to keep going with Batman, but I actually thought it's not the same thing, but with the boxing arena, I actually thought of the ending of Matt Reeves, the Batman from 21, or 22.
It's funny, I barely remember the end, and only after you said it do I have. Yeah, I forgot that it's like this.
It's only because it takes place like that movie ends in a stadium, and he's trying to protect a potential mayor candidate from a bunch of Riddler goons. Spoilers, and so that's the only thing I think of. And I actually appreciate the fact that not appreciate, but they actually went and spoilers ended. They ended Jerry's life there. I was like, holy shoot, William Holden's character, excuse me. I was like, wow, they actually did it. Like I thought he was gonna make it through.
Well, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
Okay, I'm holding on to something. William Holden himself.
The way it actually ended, in the hospital that Sean spoke of, and it just kind of ends and they walk together, the prosecutor and the heroine of the movie. If I wasn't paying attention well enough, and I think I was, but I wasn't giving it 100%, I was giving it like 85, 90% attention. The way it read to me is they sort of left it open.
I see.
They didn't definitively say that he died or lived. They did not. And I thought that was an interesting choice. The way they spoke, he could be dead or alive.
Okay.
Was my read.
That's fair.
So I don't know for sure about that.
But yeah, with the end, I like how I think the boxing match seemed pretty I say realistic. I'm sorry, that's wrong, but pretty plausible. I could see that happening. I always the hitman. He's trying to get up there. I was surprised that he was allowed up there. Obviously, well,
yeah.
I
mean that makes
one
sense.
Reporter there. He's this is a great place to get shots, and ironic there. It's just funny that he just has a loaded pea shooter. That's all he does. He's got no rifle or anything like that with a scope.
I'm not an expert on handguns in particular. I know more about rifles, but I'm pretty sure that would have been a difficult shot. That would have been a difficult shot.
Yes. I'm not trained in ballistics yet, but I definitely know. I mean, he had gravity on his side, but
there would be such a high probability you shoot the wrong person if you're using a handgun in that situation.
And I did appreciate every time he had a clean shot. And they did this obviously intentionally, but I did like how it was where one of the boxers gets hit with a heavy blow, and then the crowd cheers, and it's like everybody stands up. It's like okay, that seemed pretty plausible there, and he's just like, darn, I missed my shot.
Yeah, I like that.
It would have been more ridiculous, and I think they probably did this in parody movies, is if he had a scope on it, like some video games nowadays have, where all of a sudden you just have
in the 50s that would have been complete insanity.
Just utter asinine, and just what are you doing there with? But again, I'm just talking about parodies here and jokes.
If it was post 60s James Bond, then of course. But yeah, not in the 50s.
And yet Han Solo's pistol still makes sense.
Well, yeah, it's also not a handgun. Even if the design is based on a real handgun.
No, please don't go down, please.
I'm not going to talk more about Star Wars.
We're not going there. Don't worry. I just made an offhanded joke. Don't worry.
Yeah, we have a Star Wars embargo, especially since we did the movie for the second time not too long ago.
That's true. For reasons.
But for me, I thought it was an epic ending for a movie that is, mid-tier, so to speak, production-wise, etc. I was surprised how ambitious the ending was.
Agreed.
I thought it was really done, really well done, and I thought the tension factor was mostly on point for the entire climactic scene. The only part that made me shake my head a little bit was how he's literally waiting around the corner when everyone's leaving. And I was like, why is everyone in such a hurry? As if a bomb alert just went off. And everyone was getting out of that place like nobody's business. That was kind of insane. And because she was trying to get to him, So it annoyed me when she went to the upper deck. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Because she wants to have a bird's eye view to try to find where he's at. I get it. And then she's trying to catch up to him. And the guy's just hiding around the corner. And then, he takes a shot and he takes him out like Harvey Oswald. I mean, how Harvey Oswald was taken out, just kind of waiting for him to come by. And then he just runs into the arena where everyone's already gone. And that's the only part that I was like, so he has no escape plan now? Like, that's the deal? He's toast. And so, yeah, okay, I get it. Whatever. That was the only thing that I was like, that was too easy. Other than that, though, I love the whole build up and everything.
I mean, yeah, he's the fall guy, though, right? Like, you know, he's supposed to be the hitman,
Yeah.
and he's got to get out of there. And of course, like, maybe he tried to get into the arena because the cops weren't there. I don't know. Stupid as if I were a hitman, I don't know. Obviously, I'd have to have a plan, but like, if they had a bunch of like, you know, metal goons surrounding the place, then yeah, I gotta like keep a little more of a heads up, or at least have a better plan than that.
And then my last statement or question on this scene is, so to help up the stakes and make him extra paranoid, there's a random guy who comes and sits next to him and lets him know, hey, there's a gun on you. And he was, you know, informing for whatever his motivation was to inform him. But where did that guy come from? And how did he know he was there and where he was sitting? Does anybody know the answer to that question?
No, I think that's his street informant. I'm pretty sure that's the reporter's personal street informant. I think we saw him earlier in the film as well.
Okay.
Where he basically, is getting word on the street and is not a snitch.
Okay, so at least I know who he is now. How did he find him? Oh, I guess he just heard he knew he'd be at the game.
And he also probably just asked, hey, you know where Jerry? Yeah, do you know where Jerry is? And so it's he's down there.
I'm sorry. I have one more thing to say about the arena. So I love that it looks like it was shot in a real arena. You know, it wasn't like a set or anything. And it looked real even when they shot in the roof and the rafters. Looked like it was on location. I would say that's pretty rare for an American Hollywood movie in the early 1950s, especially one that's relatively low budget. Like, that would almost always be done on a studio stage back in those days. So that was like amazing that it was location. And the other thing I made of note was, I'm a fan of just seeing like how stadiums and theaters and different things look back in the day. And we have an old small arena here that was built in like 49 or 51 originally, and it's largely unchanged to this day, and it's still active. And so I've been in that place many times, and it would be comparable in size to the place we saw in this movie. But ours in my city from the 50s, it is so much more plain Jane and old fashioned, so to speak. That one in the movie 1952 looked extremely modern. Like, it looked like, I can't think of the name of the place, the famous place where the Celtics play in Boston, but it looked incredibly modern to me for 1952. And just as someone who notices things like that, I was kind of shocked by that.
Yeah, you going back, you thinking of that though, you saying that it's the whole climax inside the boxing arena. Yeah, you're right. I wonder if that would probably be like the selling point of the movie. I know they don't like cut, I don't know how they would have cut the movie, but that's definitely like at the very, like, you wouldn't have gotten that, and you would have gotten something like that in like a TV series, or not a TV series, but like something
in
like that.
Rocky 1976. Rocky 1.
Yep.
And then Rocky 2, but in Rocky 1 they actually shot in the real Spectrum, which is where the Philadelphia 76ers used to play back in the day. And yeah, it was in the real stadium, but they only had real extras in the closest like 30 rows, and they disguised the rest with just lights. So you never got to see what I want to see, close-ups, because I'm weird like that. I want to see close-ups of the seats and the ticket booth and the the outer ring. So this was a rare opportunity to see like a real place from this time, and just for me, that's bonus points.
Yeah, and probably with similar that Caleb and I we reviewed last year a film called A Force of One, and it took place inside a boxing arena as well, or at least a stadium, excuse me. And they filled the whole like stadium with seats of people, a crowd. And so I do wonder if this was just like what they did behind the scenes, was just say, we're going to have an exhibition fight between these two boxers.
Yeah, they did that in Rocky 3. But have you ever seen the original Highlander, Isaac?
No, I haven't.
Oh, one day you should watch the whole movie, but if you just watch the opening credits The opening credits.
He says that with everything that I haven't seen too. Oh, you haven't seen Die Hard? Oh,
No. Isaac would love the Highlander, but especially just the opening credits alone, because not only did Queen, do the soundtrack for Flash Gordon in 1980.
Yes, that Queen.
They did the soundtrack for the first Highlander, and they do the opening number for the opening credits, and it is such a really good Queen song that most people have never heard unless they watch the movie and know it. And okay, it's mild spoiler, but this is literally opening credits. You hear this Queen song that was written for the movie, and then they are shooting at a real WWF fight circa 84, 85.
Oh,
and it is
okay.
super cool because you get views from all around the arena, and it's completely full of fans, and you see WWF wrestlers down there. It's amazing with the Queen song in the background. So yeah. Sorry.
You're good.
I know Sean's done on this movie, but
yes, no, he's well.
Yes, I am. Yeah, I don't remember that much more from
whatever
this
you
movie.
got, Isaac, and then
it was a lukewarm experience for me. I'm sorry, everybody.
It's okay. No, it's fine. I actually thought you were gonna dig it after I watched it. But what else you got? I only have one other big thing to talk about, but what do you got, Isaac?
Yeah, of course. What did you personally think of the subtle, at least I think it's subtle, you could obviously say otherwise, but I thought it was a subtly done, and I kind of enjoyed it, maybe because it was just subtle. I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent with these, but what do you think of the love triangle?
I actually thought it was kind of interesting.
Okay.
They didn't focus on it that much, which would normally be done when you have a love triangle like this in a movie like this. It was pretty odd to me how she already had let me see, what's her name? I know she's top billing, but it doesn't come up in that order.
Amanda Waycross.
Alexis Smith.
Or sorry, the character. Yeah, sorry.
Wait, what's her character's name? Alexis. That's the actor. Amanda. So she already had a pre-existing relationship with the special prosecutor that we see, which I also thought was pretty weird because it seemed like people mostly knew that they were pretty good like that. And I thought that was interesting that she was going to work for him in his own office. Made me think of modern times and the whole Fannie Willis fiasco, but I'm not going to get into that right here. I just thought that was a little bit weird. And then over the course of the movie, she starts to have growing affection for the reporter character, Holden, or the actor's name is Holden. And I was like, okay, maybe she's into him. But just like we don't know if the reporter definitively died at the end, it's all just left up in the air. And I just thought that was a weird, interesting decision that you don't get closure on the triangle.
Other than, and the fact if John is the one that got the girl in the end. I mean, just by way of if he died.
Yeah, you have no idea. Literally have no clue whether McGibbon died or not. We literally have no idea. Like
we don't, yeah.
And I just think that's unusual. In my mind, a movie from this era, you're going to know the answers to those questions usually. So
there's a point where it's not before the reporter. He's not come clean with the prosecutor's father being a dirty cop, but there was. I think it was. It was inside the that's what it was. He knew about his dad, and then he goes inside, or no, he shows up to his prosecution location, and he then is like, I'm gonna resign because I can't do this anymore because my father's past deeds kind of are putting a black mark on this entire situation. And then he's like, pardon me, I'm paraphrasing, but I love the line where he's just like, something. I don't want people holding anything for me. And then he just looks at like both of them, and they just like look at each other with like, oh boy.
Yeah. I got a few more big things to unload, and then I'll be done on this movie. But I don't know which one to go with first. I'll start with Ed Begley. First of all, he's basically the big crime boss pulling the strings for this syndicate.
Yep. Just love that word.
And I like that. I watched a very brief review on YouTube on this movie, and this guy has like a super small, little movie review channel, not a lot of views. But I like he talked about how he just came in this movie, didn't know anything. He absolutely loved it, and he's approximately Isaac's age, and
lovely.
he doesn't have a lot of experience with a lot of older movies. And he was saying how this movie, when he was younger, this guy read a lot of Daredevil comics. So this guy was a big fan of Daredevil. And he's like, oh, this guy reminds me of Kingpin. And he's like, I could just totally see it. And I was like, yeah, that's a really good comparison, because he is like Kingpin in this movie. And so I just thought that was a really good comparison. And so he saw this movie almost like the prosecutor was like Matt Murdock and like trying to get to the bottom of things in his town. And so the part that first really grabbed my attention in this movie, before we get to the climax, is when they set up the prosecutor's dad, who was the dirty cop who had been informing for the mob boss, or I don't know if we want to call him mob, but the organized crime guy. And they set him up, and it's going to be a hit when they say, oh yeah, so-and-so wants to talk to you. He's over there at the general store. And that's another well done scene, like just the way it's set up step by step.
Yep.
And then the goon goes in there, smacks the shopkeeper with his pistol. The guy screams. This guy was already walking over there. He comes in. The guy comes out, takes out the cop in cold blood. But because they're trying to make it untraceable, they've set him up, which reminds me of The Dark Knight, the opening, when all the clown faces are taking each other out, unknowing like the bigger plan. And they're in that stupid crate in the back of the work truck, and they take him out. I thought that was so cool. I thought it was so unexpected, because this movie was fairly low key up to this point. I was like, oh wow, this just turned into a much more interesting movie. And it reminded me so much of like the Godfather movies, especially 1 and 2, well, all of them, but how they have interesting assassinations throughout those movies. And I thought, wow, look at this. And I was already thinking about Godfather even before this happened, because we see those trials that were happening, where the special prosecutor is bringing in all these different people and questioning them in front of the public. And I was like, oh yeah, this is like Godfather Part 2. And I thought, I wonder if this is related to the fact, because a lot of the stuff in the Godfather movies are fictionalized versions of real events. And yeah, it turns out, yeah, they were both, Godfather Part 2 and this were both inspired by the same real world situation. From 1950 to 1951, there was a senator named Estes Kefauver, and
Great name.
This committee became known as the Kefauver Committee. And this is what you see like in Godfather 2, and you see a version of it in this movie, where they start bringing in all these notorious people supposedly connected to organized crime. And in the real life situation, this was one of the first things that was ever broadcast on live television, because television was obviously pretty darn new in 1950-51. So a lot of people at home were watching these trials live, and supposedly, according to Wikipedia, this was the first time the general populace became aware of like organized crime and how it really worked in the big city. And I just thought that was kind of fascinating, because Godfather 2 is famous for those scenes, and this was inspired. That was the whole point of why they made this movie, is because they were just, playing off of what had been in real world news. So, yeah, this was like bonus points for me, all this that I just said.
All right, that's great.
I think one of the weird things, well, I found this like kind of out of nowhere. So we then step like about, when was it? It was like the 45 or 40-minute mark, we finally go to the prosecution itself, like inside the table, and or at least inside the committee, excuse me, where they start questioning people. And the way they, I guess, introduce it is by radio. I thought that was like, what the hey? So they actually like get it. Like at this point, we've been in the action the entire time. We know that this like we're gonna have a prosecution in our hands where he starts, questioning people. But then all of a sudden it's like televised or at least, broadcasted through the radio. I didn't expect that at all. I was like, now that you say that this is based off of something that was now this honestly, this movie directly seems like it was trying to be I don't say a quick cash in or anything like that, but definitely right off the success or at least right off the events of that prosecution that happened with that senator.
Right, exactly. I figured I figured Godfather 2, that was probably based on real life. It made sense to me, and yeah, figures. I have other things to say, but I've said the most of it. Do you have anything else, Isaac, before we get to the rating phase?
Oh, you'll love this. Maybe not you'll, but I'm not really too sure. I actually thought okay. So when they're doing the prosecutions, it's not the same thing, but my mind wandered back to Oppenheimer. I don't know why. Just because it's.
Yeah. When I saw Oppenheimer and they were having the Senate committee, I was thinking about Godfather 2 again. Very much.
There you go. And so I thought of this as well. Not the same thing. And I guess The Dark Knight as well, you're right, where it's Harvey Dent that's trying to prosecute all those criminals and the organized crime, excuse me. So I was like, oh yeah, that reminds me of that. The blowing up of a building as well. Pretty, I don't know if it's fairly realistic or whatnot, but wow. I actually got flashbacks to the first Godzilla movie. Just don't worry, it's not. I don't think it's the same hard driven. I just love the look of the prosecutor. He's over there, and you just hear the sounds and the screams of wailing children. I enjoyed that. And you just see him in all this chaos. Like all these people are going like around. All these emergency workers are just trying to get things under control. The fire department's there. I think it's a really good set as well, of just they have the fire trucks there as well. I don't know, I'm not a firefighter, so I have no idea if that's the
triage and stuff going on right there.
Yeah, but it's just all the chaos of this is what it's come to, where we had to basically blow up because all the assets, all the paper trail is inside that building, and the boss wants it wipe the place out, regardless of if there's a bunch of people in the city block next to it or whatnot, apartment complex next to it.
Yeah, because he thinks it'll make it seem even more unlikely that they would do such an atrocity.
Which, yeah, you could say is pretty stupid. It's that just seems fairly on the nose.
Yeah, it is, to be fair. But yeah, I'm just glad you brought that scene because I almost completely forgot to mention it. And you're right, it was pretty heavy, and I thought it was pretty heavy for this mid-tier 52 movie. And supposedly they say in dialogue that only 2 or 3 people survived out of the
or no 2 or 3 people are unaccounted for or something like that.
No, there were 2 that were struggling to live. Yeah,
that's what it was. Thank you.
No, yeah, that is pretty intense, pretty diabolical. And because you were talking about Godzilla 1 and how it kind of reminded you of that, then you immediately made me think. Just recently, I rewatched the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. And I was just thinking, when you watch a superhero movie like that, there's tons of urban destruction in all 3 of those movies. But because it's a superhero movie, it's just kind of it happens. Like when you watch one of the Transformer movies, the city's being destroyed, it's whatever. But in a movie like this, no, it's even though it may have only been 12 people, you feel it much more because it's not a fun superhero movie. And even more with Spider-Man, I realized too, this is another comic book character because Spider-Man was heavily borrowed from elements from Detective Comics, Batman. And having seen those movies recently, this is exactly what's going on. There's someone like the Kingpin, and Spidey is running around trying to figure things out. And this is the same blueprint as all those superheroes like Daredevil, Spider-Man, Batman, Dick Tracy. It's just a standard noir. And I freaking like this movie a lot. I'm sorry. But
I know, no, as like a superhero adjacent film this is, like you have to wait 8 years before you get any of those guys, by the way, other than like, Batman's still around this period. But yeah, again, as bog standard as this probably is, just what it's informed of afterwards and what we're seeing, yeah, it definitely like informs all that, and you're just like, okay, well, this is the basic blueprints of all that and why it makes sense. And I do like the fact that we kind of I'm surprised how we don't focus on William Holden's character, or not William Holden. Sorry, no,
the prosecutor.
Prosecutor. Yeah, thank you. I'm so proud. I'm so happy that, like, not happy. I'm just impressed that I thought the movie was gonna be solely about him
Yes,
from his perspective,
that's how it
but
starts.
it's really mostly about his reporter bud.
Yeah,
I'm so like, wow, I was not expecting this, and he's the one. And I guess I don't know, like showing the positivity, or at least the positive side of what the press does. I don't know if he steps his boundaries of the press or whatnot, but like, man, people. I also love the beginning where he just like the prosecutor is so like willing to give all the information to. He doesn't find the reporters as obnoxious and like whisks them away. It's like he gives them all their information and they leave. It's like, holy smokes, when you just like give everything what they want, everybody what they want, they just leave.
Yeah. And okay, this is really the last thing I'm going to say, and we're going to rate it. If you like this type of movie, like some of these noir type movies, what we were just talking about with the police or somebody trying to catch the criminals, it came out in the mid 90s. There's a Woody Allen movie that is sort of like an homage to this genre of what we just saw, except came out in the mid 90s, and Woody Allen plays the central character, and he's kind of a goof and just stumbles into this whole crime situation and stumbles into trying to solve it. It's kind of a light comedy. I think it's Curse of the Jade Scorpion. So if anyone out there is a fan of Woody Allen movies and you kind of want to see his take on making a little like a satirical version of this type of story, I would recommend. That's one of the better Woody Allen movies from his later years. I recommend it. It's kind of preposterous in a Woody Allen kind of way. And I don't think, Isaac, you've yet seen any at all of Woody Allen's, but once you learn a little bit about his style, you should definitely check out The Curse of the Jade Scorpion, which is set in the 40s or 50s. And yeah, I just think it's really good. A good pastiche of this type of movie. All right. We are going to rate this. Does anybody have a unit of measure that we can use for this?
I don't.
Ham sandwiches. There we go. Because he asked the secretary for a ham sandwich, and he takes it with him on the road.
Yeah, and then like 7 minutes later, she actually shows up with a ham sandwich, and she even shaved off the crusts for him.
Oh,
wow!
I love hearing Sean come back to life. Welcome back, Sean.
No, I was listening to everything. I was fine.
Yeah, of course.
Isaac, how many ham sandwiches out of 5 would you give this movie?
Let's see. Oh, out of 5, right? I will give this a 3.5 out of 5. Right. This is a mid-budget and or just mid-tier movie, crime noir, whatever, or just like film noir adjacent film. It definitely does feel like it's like a TV production, but with those, set pieces of like I guess with the setup of killing the cop on the street or at the petroleum station, the building blowing up as well, which is huge, and then like the end scene inside the arena. Yeah, I think this definitely is elevated by that stuff. And yeah, it's a very simple premise. It's not like we know it's this character. We're just trying to figure out a way to get them. So there's no mystery. This is not a mystery film. I guess my only question is when is the turning point? Like, when exactly is the turning point in this film?
I'll answer that now. I was going to bring that up, and I forgot to bring it up.
There you go. Now you remember.
So I think in this movie, turning point, what they're talking about is characters and their conscience. And I see.
There
was at least 3 characters, at least. There could be more, who had major moments for their character. The reporter, because he tries to be impartial, but it gets to a point where he has to step in, and he's like on the fence about how much he should get involved. The prosecutor's father,
because
he's a dirty cop and he wants to obviously not get busted for what he's done. And he tries to explain, why, because, he want to have a little bit more, one of the toughest jobs, so, and then right when he decides to try to come clean, he gets taken out. And also you could say, Carmelina.
Yes, Carmelina.
Who had overheard the conversation, and then she's like on the run for a bit, until she finally gets to the prosecutor's office. So I think that it was that turning point. And not to bring up a Bible story, but it's kind of reminds me of the story of Jonah. And if you know something and you have to say something,
Yes.
don't remain silent. Like, say what you got to say, do what you got to do. That's your calling. And Jonah in the story struggled with that. So it's that kind
Was that the scripture this week, or
that's the turning point? I'm sorry. I couldn't help but think about it. So that's the turning point.
that's fair? No, that's fine. Would you say also that one of the syndicate leaders? Would you say that the guy who hires the hitman? Do you think that's also a turning point, or that's just like he's going about his business?
In a way, but see, he's one of the stooges of the big boss. And the big boss realizes, we need to not mess with this because this is going to screw it. Because that's the trap that they're trying to set.
I already blew up a building, so we got to keep the low here.
But that jacknut is like, I'll just call this guy from Detroit and he'll do me a favor. Again, that's what made me think of Fargo, because something like that happens a lot in the Fargo series in multiple seasons. So there's always like some guns for hire, hitmen and whatnot in the Fargo series, and they're all pretty amazing in their own ways. And so you could call that a turning point, but he's obviously the one that screws the pooch for everyone. But I was like, if the cops can know exactly where to go find him playing an illegal card game, they could have picked him up at any point. But anyway.
Oh yeah, clearly.
I'll let Sean go next. Sean, how many ham sandwiches out of 5?
I'm going to give this 3 out of 5.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Interesting.
Nothing wrong with 3.
I do have to admit, I was, I fell asleep.
Oh, okay.
Like twice during it. I'm so sorry. But that's like middle-aged, lounging on the couch type thing.
Hey, it's fair. I'll accept it.
Yeah, it's fair.
I'm glad you're here.
But to be fair, I have reviewed many of these old movies on other podcasts that I've been on. Yeah, 3 out of 5. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Oh, that's a nice, respectable score.
Eric, how many hammed sandwiches would you give this out of 5?
First, I'm going to look at our sponsor's website.
Oh, that, you know what? You're absolutely I completely forgot. The sponsor of today's video is
Rotten Tomatoes, and it looks like an AI, so I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's kind of AI-ish. But prosecutor John Conroy is determined to bring down organized crime in his Midwestern town. He looks to his father, police officer, for help, but he refuses. Childhood friend, investigative reporter, senses something fishy. Yada, yada, yada. Thank you, AI. I don't like your synopsis.
Applause.
But there's only 5 critic reviews on what they call the tomato meter now. And with the 5, it got an 80%. So that's good.
Get out of town. Holy smokes.
With the popcorn meter, as they call it, audience score, only 50-something people, which is a very low number for almost anything on Rotten Tomatoes. 50-something.
Unfortunate good times.
I don't hardly ever see things under the tens of thousands usually. It's 42% on the popcorn meter. But for this reviewer, I so want to give it 4 ham sandwiches because I really enjoyed it overall. But I cannot wipe my mind of the much more elevated movies I've seen from this time period or dealing with crime back in older movies. There's just too many that are like really, really good. And I reserve those for like the 4 to 5 space. So I can't, in good conscience, give this a 4, even though I enjoyed it like a 4. So I'm stuck with 3.5 because it's better than 3 for me, but it's not 4. but it was just solid and good. And another reason I liked it was because I have watched a lot of 1940s and 50s black and white movies just recently, but almost all the ones I watched were melodramatic dramas, romance for the most part. And I like those, but it was good to see something from this era that was not like the several movies I've watched in the last 2 weeks. And so even though this was in the same time period, it felt really different for me. And so it kind of like freshened up my palette, so to speak, for black and white movies, at least for right now. So it was great. It was great. It was really great. And yeah, like again, many people in modern times have not seen this movie. I think it's got a little play on TCM network, but outside of that, I really don't think many people have seen this. And I don't know, if you're into black and white movies, old Hollywood, and you just kind of want to see something you haven't really heard of, probably check out Turning Point. You can watch it for free on multiple channels. I searched YouTube looking for the channel Sean was speaking of. I cannot find. I found many other people who posted the movie, but I can't find the one he was specifically talking about. So maybe I can get that in the show notes. But that is what we have for you today. I hope we've uncovered something you might be interested in checking out, perhaps. And who knows what the next recording. We're trying to get back one of our original hosts on this show. Don't tell anybody. We're trying to get back Mr. Burgess. So I don't know. I'm working on it. I don't know if anyone listening to this even remembers what movie was suggested back in 2013 or 2014, but we have not forgotten what movie that is. And who knows? No guarantees, but I'm working on bringing back the original triad. We'll see what happens. Anyway, closing out the show today, this is Eric.
This is Sean.
This was Isaac.
And until next time,
the balcony is yours.
Prognosis negative.
Oh, I said the A word. I don't know if you guys heard that on your end.
Oh.
It activated my Amazon
What?
device.
What? Okay.
Oh, you guys didn't hear it.
That's funny.
It was only in my ears.
No, I heard her. I heard her talking.
Hold on, let me think. There was something else I was going to address that Sean mentioned. Oh God, I'm sure it'll come back to me later. Okay. So in terms of what it reminded me of. Oh, okay. Sorry, Caleb. Edit this. I remembered now. What Sean mentioned earlier that I wanted to bring up. Oh shit! What was it? I just lost it again. I swear, brain-eating virus. Oh, Sean, what did you say?
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm going to start with the other thought, and it's going to come back to me again, like it just did. Oh shit! Okay, let me go back to the other thing that I remembered. Okay, I should have just said it instead of saying it. Just came back to me. So speaking of things that this reminded me of. Oh shit! It happened. Okay, so shit! I'm gonna go crazy. So speaking of
Caleb, please leave this in after the fact.
No.
Yeah, do you have Tourette's?
All you can do is
What's
the
going
Easter egg.
on?
Yeah, Easter egg. Yeah, no, really. Yeah,
Every time I start thinking about the second thought, the first thought jumps in my head. Oh my god! Bear with me.
There's a bear. Where?